I think there's a voice in their head that says they don't belong. There's a voice in their head that says they don't have a Harvard MBA. There's a voice in their head that says they're not educated. There's a voice in their head that says we don't know what we're doing, that we're going to get found out. There's a client that I just started working with, and they said, honestly, we have no direction, don't know what we're doing. And I'm like, well, you're a $35 million company. I think I might disagree with that. So it's those voices in our head that when you shine light on them and know you're not alone, that's the big thing. Because I've had numerous clients that would reach out and go, hey, would you ever work with me? Because I only went to high school. Hey, would you ever work with me because of whatever story they're telling? We all tell stories in our head that maybe we don't share publicly.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we talk about overwhelm. We talk about the feeling that you aren't getting enough done or that you just can't keep up. Ending the cycle of overwhelm requires you to be an intentional leader, requires you to get a grasp of some of the things that you're probably not willing to struggle with. And today we unpack those with our special guest. It's Shawn Shepheard. He's an executive coach. He's with Shawn Shepheard International, having clients all over the world. We talk about his experience with working with CEOs, leaders who are in the cycle of overwhelm. And how do we make sure that we rise above that? How do we connect the dots for our team and lead them the way that we need them to show up so that our companies can grow? Ending the cycle of overwhelm is very important if you want to play at your optimal level. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm the host of the show. I'm also an executive coach, and we have a leadership development arm for our business. We help companies grow. We help them create the right kind of leadership that creates the right culture, that creates the right performance opportunities for people. We really do this from a number of different factors, but if you're curious about how we could help you grow your business by having you perform at the leadership level and having your team around you, turning managers into leaders, then make sure you reach out and get a call with me. In that call, we will unpack the key things that are important for you to let go of and stop doing so that you can have the company that you want and be the leader that your people deserve. Just go to genehammett.com, schedule your call today. Now, here's the interview with Shawn. Shawn, how are you?
I'm very good, Gene. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic now that you're here.
Thank you. Hey, you know what? I've listened to your podcast, seen the guest list. So, honestly, it's a little bit nervous coming on, but I know you're a good guy. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I wouldn't be nervous. It's just going to have a good conversation between friends. And I'll go ahead and frame it in for everyone. Like Shawn and I met each other, I guess about a year ago, fast friends around. We do sort of the same work, but you work with a different type of people than I work with. So we're going to look into your world and see what some of the challenges they are, because I think they'll help some of the people that are listening to the show. But we are friends and you are a coach, and I really respect you. So thanks for being here.
Ah, you're welcome. Anytime.
Shawn, tell us about who you work with and really kind of the problem that you solve for them most often.
Yeah. So the people that I currently work with, I work with family-owned business owners that have had a tremendous amount of success long before they ever met me. And they get to a point where they can't continue to grow their company without being overwhelmed and working 24/7. So I help them continue to grow their company while actually enjoying more time off for the things that are important.
Well, it sounds like me.
Yeah. I know it does. We're both of us. Yes.
And I know you've been doing this for years. Like, what got you into coaching and what keeps you here?
I think, I've been coaching probably my whole life. And my wife has said that, you've always been a coach. I've always said that you're a coach. And I was hesitant, Gene, for many years to call myself a coach. I call myself a speaker, consultant, everything but a coach. But it's really the heart of everything I do, that I strongly believe that to be the best in whatever industry or whatever part of your life, you need to do it with help of others. And I've had coaching my whole life, and I really didn't fully embrace the term coaching probably until about 10 years ago. And now actually I'm quite offended when people call me a consultant or anything else. I love coaching. I would never hire a coach that doesn't have a coach himself. And I know we both have coaches, and I just strongly believe in it. To lead the life that you really want, we need help, and we need somebody outside, the pickle jar to help us, because things that are too close to us, we just don't see.
Well said. And since you were a reluctant coach, and I think a lot of people don't understand the difference, and that really maybe it's a nuance between a consultant and a coach. But I want you to look at this from the lens of today's leaders, like your clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to be a consultant. Sometimes they have to be a coach inside their roles. How did they distinguish the difference between the two?
The way that I look at it is, I really do think I coach the person first, the leader first. And I always say you have to lead and be the difference themselves, because they're not going to listen to anything if you're not walking the talk. And then what we probably both do is we do coaching and strategy. And I think that really sets us apart from others. There's people that just do strategy or just do coaching. And I think that when you can bring those two together, that's when you see massive changes, not only in their company and their results, but in their lives.
It's interesting that you say that about me. And I know we know each other, but not like deeply.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that my superpower is the combination of those two.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 20 years in strategy and working with companies and working on as a consultant in different ways, but it was the strategic mind that got forged. And then working for yourself, you're not coaching yourself, but you're developing strategy for yourself. You're overcoming challenges. And then when I became a coach, this whole new world about the deeper issues that have a grasp on us became aware to me. Like I knew it was always there. I just didn't have words for it. And now I combine them together. And it sounds like that's what you do too.
100%. And I think it didn't come out of a strategic plan that I ended up doing this. And really what it came out of was, before I even officially called myself a coach, I would do all this consulting across the United States and Canada. And I would do the work or the workshops or whatever sessions I was leading in the companies. And the truth came out at dinner, when I sat across the table, broke bread, and had real conversations with the leaders. And I'd say, tell me what's really going on. And they would tell me things, Gene, that they haven't told their closest friends or their husbands or wives. And they would talk about the real struggles, the real conversations that they couldn't have with anybody else. And often I would say, I get it. I hear it from a bunch of leaders, the same thing. And they would usually say something to like, oh, you're just being Canadian, or you're just being nice. And one of the big moments in my career was, because I would go home, I'd go back to the hotel or go back home, and I go, there's got to be a better way to serve these people. But I didn't know, but I kept asking myself that question. And then finally I thought, why don't I throw them all in the same room and let's do some group coaching? And I'll never forget when I did that. I was terrified. I thought everything might go wrong. And what happened was real conversations. What happened was they knew they weren't alone, because it's lonely at the top. And I know everybody says that, but it's true. And then they all came together very quickly. And as soon as you see something you haven't seen before, you can't go back.
Now, Shawn just mentioned a question I want to put a spotlight on. Tell me what's really going on. I believe that leaders should be able to sit down with the people that report to them and be able to say, tell me what's really going on. And they have the kind of conversation that they don't have at home, and they don't have, with their friends. They really talk about the work that they're doing, the doubts that they may have, the fears they may have, the confidence issues, or whatever it is. Because when you are talking about with that leader, hopefully they're armed with the ability to support you and listen to you and help you go in the right path. This isn't about telling you what to do. This is about coaching you to a new level of awareness. Maybe it's giving you a little bit of an insight around this, or it's just listening to you. That's very important. All that being said, just keep going, keep connecting with your people and doing what you can. Back to Shawn. And I want to make a transition in this because I think that, when people are thinking about the challenges in family-owned businesses, being overwhelmed, there's some things that you probably see over and over. So what is at the heart of feeling overwhelmed and the business really having more of a control over them than they are leading the business?
I think there's a voice in their head that says they don't belong. There's a voice in their head that says they don't have a Harvard MBA. There's a voice in their head that says they're not educated. There's a voice in their head that says we don't know what we're doing, that we're going to get found out. There's a client that I just started working with, and they said, honestly, we have no direction, don't know what we're doing. And I'm like, well, you're a $35 million company. I think I might disagree with that. So it's those voices in our head that when you shine light on them and know you're not alone, that's the big thing. Because I've had numerous clients that would reach out and go, hey, would you ever work with me? Because I only went to high school. Or, hey, would you ever work with me because of whatever story they're telling? We all tell stories in our head that maybe we don't share publicly.
I know one of the areas at which you're called into is around communication. And you know, I'm writing the book on tough conversations and really trying to help people not avoid them because that's dangerous, but also how do you actually get them to change behaviors? Nearly everyone I've talked to about these tough conversations have said, well, I've had them before. And I'm like, oh, well, what happened? Well, it didn't work. And I'm like, oh, so what's next? They're like, I don't know. When you're working with these leaders about communication, what is the big issue that you have to face with them first?
I'll tell a quick story about, I used to do a lot of work in elementary schools, and one of the best principals that I ever worked with, she brought kids down to the office to catch them doing good and not just when they got in trouble. So then if you heard on the announcement, Gene Hammett to the office, it wasn't like, oh, Gene's in trouble. It was like, oh, maybe, maybe not. And then every kid got the lollipop or whatever. And it took the stigma out of having the conversation. And that always stuck with me to this day, is when you only have conversations when things are going sideways or when people are in trouble, that's the problem. The problem is you need to have conversations on a consistent, ongoing basis for everything, and it takes the stigma out of it. If you know every Tuesday, Gene, that we're going to talk, or every last Thursday of the month, Gene and Shawn get together for lunch for an hour and a half, there's no stigma. It's just what we do. And I think that's the number one starting point, is making them consistent.
Now, we talked about catching them doing good. What this really is about recognizing people for doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. And I know you may say, well, I pay them. That's my recognition. Well, I would like for you to voice it. I'd like for you to just take a moment to catch people that are listening actively, or being proactive, or coming up with a spreadsheet that is, really helps us make decisions, or, getting a project organized, or getting a difficult client back in alignment. All of those things are necessary parts of the job. But you as a leader taking time to notice it and recognize it, voicing it, and doing that compassionately and specifically will make them see you as a leader, and they will be more apt to take the constructive criticism that will come down the road when necessary. Make deposits in the Goodwill Bank. Back to Shawn. I'm smiling over here because chapter 20 in my book is making good deposits in the bank, Goodwill deposits. When you are giving feedback that is positive, uplifting, or connective in a nature, not I've got to tell you something that's going to be tough to hear. Because how do you get people like CEOs to take the time to give that kind of recognition? Because I know it's hard for me and my clients. It's probably hard for you and your clients.
I think it's, and my clients will always say they're founders of companies and family-owned businesses. So what they would say is what makes it hard is because it's always been hard in the past. So it's kind of the old history where they keep revisiting. What also makes it hard is they don't know how to have them. Like, to be honest, it's like, okay, let's have them once a month or once a week or whatever. But then their mind goes, well, how do I have them? And I do think the consistent format, there's a couple things that I always say. You review the game film every week. I call it review the game film. What are your 3 wins? What was the biggest challenge? What's one thing you do differently? And you have that conversation every week for the next 12 weeks, you will see change. And when they get to know the questions before, I always start all my coaching calls with what are the 3 wins? And at the beginning of coaching relationships, people struggle. And then 3 months into it, they're like, hey, Shawn, can I have 4 wins? Right? Because they know the questions. It's kind of like they know the exam questions. But that's the beautiful thing, because we want them to start to think differently in between the conversation, because that's where the change happens.
We don't know each other. I've already said this, and I'm saying I'm going to smile again. My framework for starting off all my coaching relationships is very similar. And
it doesn't surprise me, right?
I will have clients that come back to me that will say, I've been trying to think of what my wins were before we got on the call today.
Yeah.
And it makes me laugh because I'm like, I do it because I want them to be able to share the impact that they're making. I want that to be the place where we start before we dive into the heavy stuff, which would be, I feel lonely, or I feel like in doubt, or this sucks, or whatever it may be. Shawn, we're trying to really understand, the people you work with, these leaders that think that they're not enough.
Yes.
You didn't say imposter syndrome, but that's kind of what's the underlying issue. How do you get them to rise through that or lead despite the imposter syndrome? Because I know even when you get even more successful, it starts to rear its ugly head again.
Well, the number one thing is, and I don't know if it was Steve Jobs that said you can only measure backwards or look backwards. So I do VIP days for clients. And so I'll tell you the format. Part one, it's a 3-part of the day. And this relates to all my coaching too. Let's look back at your history. Like, tell me when you started the company. Tell me when you went to bed and were terrified of paying the rent. Tell me about that. And then when they look at the history in that moment, Gene, even in like an hour, they're like, oh my God, yeah. Wow, I had a client that recently saw it all on the whiteboard and he took a picture and like he was getting emotional. So number one is this is not new. Like, look at the track record that you've had. So that's part one. Part two is I go from, let's look at the back, like the success, because we all have success. I love hockey and hockey cards, baseball cards. There's stats on the back of the card. There's no hiding, right? So if you had a bad year 3 years ago, it's there. Then the second part is, where do you want to go? And the future company. So we do that. And then usually then we have lunch, and then on a VIP day in the afternoon is all about, okay, what about the present? What do we need to change? And when you give them the framework where they have a chance to celebrate, and on a micro level with, I do a lot of work with leadership teams, sales teams, and, like 20 some years experience, most of the meetings, otherwise they would just jump into all the things that are going wrong. No, in the worst week, there's wins. Let's capture those first. And it changes the energy. And I use sports analogies all the time as your favorite football team. They don't like walk out onto the field, like they run out. So why would we start that way? So capturing the wins, what's going well, seeing where you want to go, and then like, how do we make that happen today?
Shawn, I know that you work on some of the deeper elements, and I'm going to give you a chance here to really get to the heart of it. Like, what's some of the most proud work that you've done helping a leader think differently, behave differently, and really kind of just show up differently for himself and for his team?
I'll take it even like the unexpected win for me was I had dinner with a client and his wife. And so, 45 minutes into the dinner, my client, excused himself to take a phone call or the washroom. And his wife said to me, he's going to talk about all the wins and the growth of the company and the team. But I just want to thank you because I have my husband back. My kids have their father back. He's not in a rush to get out of the house in the morning. When he's home, he's actually home. He's not on the phone. That was probably one of the proudest moments of my career.
I can relate to that. I had the family-owned business before I became a coach, and I had about a 2-year-old who was mimicking his dad. And I thought it was funny because he would pick up my 2 cell phones and he would talk to both of them. And I thought, look at that. I told to my wife, isn't that cute? And she goes, you think that's cute? She goes, that's how he sees you.
Yeah.
And it hit me. That wasn't what I was intending. And I took this like real time to reflect and was like, okay, who am I when I'm around my child? And I wasn't present.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is the work I get to enjoy doing with my clients, you get to do for your clients. It's not just about revenue growth. It's not just about being a better leader. It's about them being the person that they've always wanted to be. You ever felt that way as a coach?
Yeah. But I think those, in my opinion, they work together. I think, how you get growth is when you show up in all areas of your life, not just at work, because nobody wants to hang out with a rich jerk, right? or whatever. And how you show up in any client when they reach out to me and say, no, I just want to talk about the business. I'm like, I'm not the guy for you, because that's a shallow victory. If it's just about numbers, I'm not the coach for you.
We got one question left. Take as much time as you need within reason. You talked about overwhelm. I don't know if we've really hit it, the home run I want to hit here. How do you help a leader who is feeling a sense of overwhelm in the work that they're doing really show up in the way you're describing?
I would say ambition comes with the dark side. One of the things that really bothers me in social media is this hustle, get up at 4 a.m, do all this stuff. And no, like, I think that's BS. Go ahead, whatever makes good movies and whatever. I don't know. Does anybody want to lead like that? Not me. It's a process of doing less and playing to your strength. And that takes an honest conversation, because we think the leaders that I work with pride themselves on rolling up their sleeves, and there's no job beneath them, and they will do whatever it takes. And I love that about them. I don't want to change their values or anything, but that is a recipe for disaster when you're growing. That is not actually working at the peak performance. And one of my clients, he said that the hardest thing was giving up his book of business, because it was about $500,000 that he did. And then he finally did. He said it was the hardest decision of his professional life. And then literally 2 months later, his head of sales came in and said, by the way, you weren't very good at it anyway. So it's tough to step away and go, somebody else is better at this job. It's tough to just do the things that make your heart sing that you're good at. And I joke with clients, but there's a point in that, hey, I'm going to buy your company, but you got to stay on for 3 years. What are the 2 things that I'm going to have you only do 2 things? And they usually know what those answers are. It's all relationship building and big thinking. And then I'm like, okay, well, I didn't buy your company. Where's that in your calendar? And the less is more is very hard for ambitious people to get.
Well said. I could keep talking to you, Shawn, but that's our time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Hey, anytime, Gene.
Wow, what a great interview with Shawn. At the end there, we were talking about, overwhelm. We were talking about the things that are getting in the way, that are heavy for us. I felt it. I'm sure you felt it too. And hopefully you realize that you can actually end this cycle if you're willing to. Now, there's lots of tools I could give you. There's lots of tools that Shawn could give you if you want to reach out to Shawn. But if you are struggling in any way and you feel like you could talk to someone about it, don't let that sit there. Reach out to someone and ask for help. Don't be so prideful and let your ego get in the way that you're not willing to ask for help. I'm willing to help you. You can go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today, or you can actually reach out to anyone in your network that is willing to help you. Don't let overwhelm run you ragged and really keep you from being the leader that your people deserve. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, we encourage. We'll see you next time.